Welcome back to the No Acid Needed podcast. Today I have Jeremy Lasman with me, and we're going to jam on imagination and lots of other things that I'm sure are going to come up along the way. So welcome, Jeremy. I'm happy to have you here. Could you tell us
Thank
a
you.
little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I used to work with Elon Musk at SpaceX, doing IT and marketing related activities. I was there for their first successful launch, and really played a role in helping to reignite the public's excitement for space travel again. After SpaceX, I dove into a comic book concept that I had, and we created a franchise called Mania. There's a movement of mental health empowerment that's kind of behind it, and kind of enmeshed with what we created with the story. And then after Mania, I kind of dove into what I'd call my soul's work, which iterated and evolved into imagination technology. That's what I call my approach, my work system, whatever you want to call it. That is really the application of quantum mechanics for personal transformation, evolution, and really just providing people a new level of passion and innovation for their life and business. And so that's where I support individuals and companies right now. And yeah, that's what I've got going on.
Thank you for sharing. That all sounds actually really exciting. And I want to make sure I understood you correctly. Did you say the applications of quantum mechanics for like self-development, did you say? Or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
would love
Yep.
to know more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, at first, and I feel like you'll align with this, but the initial approach is that you come at self-development from a place of wholeness and completeness first. Whereas traditional self-help and things is like, okay, you're broken, so let's figure out how to fix you. With the way that I go about it and the way that I feel the best results happen is you come at it from a place of wholeness first. And so from there, that's really where the work takes off, and why it's so accelerated is because you're going at it immediately from a place of truth versus illusion. And that is in essence how you start to apply quantum mechanics to what you are looking at in terms of the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all these bodies that we have. Imagination technology is the big picture approach to the whole system: body, mind, spirit, soul, the flow of it, the communication, the connection, the link, as a big picture whole consciousness.
I see. So what do you see as like the approach that typically people take, like you were saying, where they're coming at it from a place of needing to fill something that doesn't already exist, or repairing or mending? Why do you think that approach is less effective? What typically happens if someone comes to this work from that space?
What happens is you become an information consumer, and you read a book, you go to this workshop, you consume all of this information, and what happens is you have this hardware and software, your brain, your body, your mind, all of this technology, and all this information is coming through, and it's like you're running a computer from 1996, and that the information is coming through, and it's being piled on top of this antiquated technology, and versus doing it from a new place that is to get to the place where it's not piling information on top of old philosophies, but rebuilding your philosophy from a blank slate.
I see. And so when So how would one do that, starting from a completely blank, sort of, not blank slate, but from a newer sort of space? Because that seems really tenuous. I feel like it might seem sort of almost
Yes.
um, just a lot, because there's already a lot there.
Yeah.
What's your
And
what's
this
your
is,
take on that?
yeah. And this is exactly what my course I self is, and why it relates to quantum mechanics. And I'm not, you don't need to be a physicist to understand this. I'll try to do this as basic as possible.
Mm.
But first you realize that you are the one. So it's realizing that how much time you're carrying, the past and the future, starting to get an awareness of like, oh wow, I'm carrying all this time, and then
Mm.
bringing those in and out points closer and closer to your one moment. That's like the first kind of uh the first tier. That's the third dimensional approach to it, is how much time am I carrying. Then the next is to realize that you're the 0 point. So now that you've brought all of this time, past and future, closer to your present moment in your awareness, now it's to take it even further to the 0 point and realize
Mm-hmm.
that the natural state of the mind is actually empty instead of full. And that's a counterintuitive way of looking at what like your interaction with the mind and the way that you identify with it. But if you can see that that the things of the mind are coming from an empty place, then you can realize that the natural state is that empty place, and form a new relationship with that 0 point of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to start to, again, subtract the things that you're carrying. The game that I say, it's a game of subtraction, not addition. So you're not adding information, you're just subtracting things off your plate in a very deliberate way and an efficient way. Like there's no rush. Like it doesn't have to be, in this moment, but as if you can look at it, instead of adding information that you're subtracting, all of a sudden it becomes easier, because it's like lessening the burdens that you're carrying.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I can see that in terms of what you mentioned, that if people are coming from that space of trying to fix something, then you mentioned that they would be consuming more and more information. And so if you're realizing that you're the 0 point, which we'll define that in a second for our listeners who might not be familiar with that, but if you know that that's more of your true nature, and your natural state is not hoarding all this information and thinking constantly so much, then you would be more apprehensive about consuming more information, and rather, like you mentioned, the process might be turned on its head, where you're actually thinking about what you already have, A, and B, what might not belong, and C, looking at how you relate to consuming as well, right? Looking at everything that you're continuously thinking, like basically the behavior element of it. What do your behaviors look like in terms of how you relate to self-development, how you relate to growth, how you relate to the 0 point?
Mm.
I think that it would be helpful to define that. So 0 point, and then also what you mentioned in terms of time, where you said did you say, and I want to make sure I don't put words in your mouth. So did you say that you are accumulating time, or someone like is that what you said? Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah,
I don't
so
really know what you
it's,
mean when you say that. I don't really know what you mean.
yeah, it's the way that we've been conditioned to uh our responsibilities, our identity, uh, our programming, however you want to look at the way in which we grow into who we are. We're taught that we are our experience. And so if you're 30 or 40 years old, you in your body are carrying 30 years worth of time in your field at any given moment. And especially if you're um, in pain or chronic pain, that's a sign that it's really inefficient, that the time in your body is being stuck, that it can't flow in an optimal way. Um, and so when you can really examine this and find out, especially with pain and suffering, where in my body am I feeling this? How much time is contained within it? And then really looking at it and asking yourself, do you want to continue carrying it like this? It really opens up new possibilities and new relief, new lightness from the energy that you thought you needed to carry or that you were unconsciously carrying.
So the way that I'm understanding is that you're sort of using time as a function of how long have you been reconditioning that same thing, whatever that is, whether that's just a thought or belief or pain or habit or, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So then how do you define 0 point?
Yes. So I look at it as in our evolution, like I was saying with the information in a technological way are ones and zeros, like a bunch of ones and zeros that are just flowing through a computer. And in a self-conscious state, which is our old way of looking at human evolution, is like I'm this identity and I'm separate from all these other people and things, and I'm an individual and there is other, us and them, and all of that separative kind of philosophy is all being run by data, by you thinking that you are the information that is going through your system. And that's where the identity is constructed, is based off of all this information, all your experiences.
Yeah.
And so when you see yourself as the one, then you're shrinking the amount of time. And then when you see yourself as the zero, now you're seeing the natural state of the mind. And now, and what I say in my work is, now we're going from information technology to imagination technology. It's going away from the limitation of being either a one or a zero, and going into the superposition, as in the quantum language, of being either the one or the zero, or right in between, either, both, neither, or, which is in basic human kind of approach, is just giving people more choice. It's giving people more possibilities,
More
so that they
degrees
don't
of
feel
freedom,
so
right?
stuck. Yeah, choice is the freedom, so that whatever you feel stuck in can instantly be alleviated, because there's more possibilities to choose from when you're no longer either the one or the zero. But that comes from the 0 point of being both states at once and neither of them.
And would you also say being the witness of them, so the space, right? Because if you're neither, then you could be said to be the witness of them.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. When we go into the spirituality, metaphysical side, like the observer, the witness, like that is definitely when you get into the presence, that is definitely the way of looking at it, is like the perceiver of it.
And I love what you mentioned in contrast of like information versus imagination. And it's inspiring thoughts of how we actually, you know, pay so much allegiance to also information. Like we become tied to that, we become enslaved to that. And it's like it's like information also becomes like an entity almost. It's like it kind of, it resonates with what I've heard before. When you have a belief sometimes, or actually a secret, the more energy you place into keeping this certain information a secret, the more energy you're giving it, and it becomes its own entity almost. It becomes like its own thing that has power over you and keeps accumulating all this more data around it.
Yeah.
So how is imagination a, would you say, an antidote to that?
Yes. Yeah. Antidote is a good word. I go to the simplicity of just being that samurai with a samurai
Mm-hmm.
sword going truth,
Mm.
illusion. And if you can have that discipline, you're going to be slicing a lot, and it can feel maybe painful or scary to like keep burning down those information
Yeah.
based structures. But if you have an allegiance to the truth versus illusion, it's instant, it's direct, and it's swift. But you know, it takes that level of samurai discipline to be that hard on yourself as an ego, to slice your ego, like, and to do it regularly as you are in the soul evolution of your mastery. This is mastery that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a I was actually, this is funny because I realized this before, because you know, words can sometimes mean a lot or mean little, where mastery was like the thing that I was like, this is what I do, I help people with mastery. But like, really, that doesn't make sense to a lot of people because they're still in the mindset of growth. And so I'm using them
Mm. Mm.
interchangeably now. Whereas at a certain stage, you transcend material growth or physical growth, and you go inward to the mastery of your
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Mm-hmm.
But they're kind of interchangeable. So what we're really talking about is growth, the evolution of your soul that is growing beyond the limits of just a unidimensional, one dimensional look at,
Mm.
like, I'm a third dimensional body in earth, and that's all I
Mm-hmm.
am. And that's very
Mm-hmm.
limiting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. There's so much that I could sort of extrapolate from that too. Um, I think that your samurai example also, it just reminded me of how when when one doesn't do that, like when you sort of let things be more and you're not as vigilant and as careful. It's not necessarily that you're not aware, because that's another state, but when you are aware of all those different thoughts, like both illusions and truth arising all the time, but you're not playing that much of a choosing role, where you're just sort of letting things be,
Mhm.
how different that is from the state that you're talking about, in terms of how the necessity for both, obviously. But I'm
Yeah.
just I'm just reflecting on how, for example, being cognition that Maslow talks about is so much about actually allowing things. You sort of see the value also of both. To me, it's also like some certain things are not just all illusion and
Mm.
all truth. Tends to just be truth, so it tends to be like all truth, yeah, all. But illusion, I think that has like degrees, of like how much illusion it is, and like how how that might also be useful. So
Hmm.
like these days I'm really coming from a space of just seeing the usefulness of everything. So that's why it's coloring how I'm responding to you in this way. It's just funny when I think about it. So I've definitely been in that role in the past of being so much more gung ho about like, this is false, this is delusion, this is truth. And like where I'm at right now is more like seeing both. And
Hmm.
although that doesn't mean that you have to let it just stick around, it's just interesting how when you are more adamant and vigilant about, you know, looking at every single thought and every single behavior and every single thing that's arising, and then seeing it through that lens, how that can really help you accelerate your growth. And then also how it can also lead you towards illusion also. Like I feel like if you're not very careful and if you don't allow for some room within that process of inquisitiveness or skepticism or so on, it can actually also lead you into illusion.
Yeah,
That makes sense?
totally. And I think like what you're pointing at is the whole going from unconscious evolution to conscious evolution.
Mm, mm,
Because if you're going at this from that place of being feeling broken or incomplete, then that vigilance turns into like just self-consciousness and
oh my God,
self-hatred, and
exactly.
right. And so that's why it's precision. It's a precision blade, not necessarily like a bludgeoning instrument that you're just smashing things. It's precision. That's a craft.
Yeah.
But I totally understand, because at a certain point you can go as deep or as high into that truth oneness perspective, but then like in eras like this where now we're kind of forced to be at home and not go
Mm-hmm.
outside, and our patterns and our routines are being shattered. It's like we have to be in the body, and you see
Mm.
that there is a relationship of, okay, now that we're here, there's a game to play of self-awareness. Like, yes, I know this is all an illusion, but I'm here to like play and create and be messy with it. And just it's I think what it comes down to is it's the craft of self-awareness,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
can go high up into the truth and be in those clouds of oneness, but if you came to earth, you came here to have an experience. So it's really, okay, I know, but I'm self-aware, so now let's just play in it. But that's how I kind of look at it.
And I think that what you said is spot on because it's both. To me, it's both. It's like, okay, that that the sword has to be sharpened. So the way that you sharpen it, I feel, is by sitting also and contemplating those things.
Mhm.
And and you're right. It's when you're coming from a place of, needing to fix, needing to repair, needing to fill something that can really, to me, in my view, only can be filled by self-love and self-acceptance. Like if you don't have that as a foundational thing, you're going to be using the sword in a tainted way. You're going to be, it's going, essentially, like your wielding of the sword is going to be tainted by your own shadow. So when you're coming at it from a place of destroying the illusion because you're still seeking to be fulfilled through doing that, or seeking things that you already have through doing that, you're going to be drawn further into illusion.
Yeah.
So it's not about the sword to me. To me, it's about the awareness of it, the awareness behind the sword, and how often you sharpen your sword, and actually that's mastering your craft, and allowing for the uses, like honoring illusion as well. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's not like you're not when you're cutting through it, to me, you're not cutting with vindictiveness. Like, you're not saying like, wow, that's not truth. It's like, you're saying more like, I feel like that's not truth right now, right here in this way. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep. Yeah. Consciousness is inclusive of all possibilities. That's the freedom. That's the free will. That's the field of all possibilities. That's the imagination, is infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, yeah, exactly. I could not agree more with and be in resonance with what you're saying, for sure.
And it's awesome, because if it's inclusive, it's also I feel like it's not there's a value to everything. So it's not that it's not vindictive. It's just that you can't be wrong in a way. Like, it's all okay. Like, there is a use for everything at any one time, and there's a playful energy to it for me. It's like, because it's all okay right now, you can exhale and you can actually choose more wisely.
Yes.
You know, because you're not coming at it from any energy of like just neediness, or just this weird, like, not weird, but this like frazzled desperation energy, or like this sort of unbalanced place of distortion, of like feeling like you know the ultimate truth, or like are wielding the sword from that place of anxiety, essentially, like non-inclusiveness.
Right. It's the wielding. It's really talking about the reference point in which the wielding is happening from.
Like the 0 point.
Versus, is a person wielding it, or is a presence wielding it? That's the truth versus illusion, is the shift, the evolutionary shift from the state of person, like personhood, being a person and identifying as a person, to identifying as the state of presence. That reference point shift is where the care, the precision comes from, is because it's not personal anymore.
And it's not egotistical.
Exactly.
And it's coming from there. It's almost like impartial. It's not. It's so much more. There are just degrees of. It's interesting, because I feel like there's a level of detachment to it, but it's not detached. You see what I'm saying? I don't feel like it's detached, because
it's neutrality. I think neutrality.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So how do you see people operating more from that space? What do you think are certain guidelines around that for like every day?
To me, in my language, it comes down to passion. So if you're doing the work, if you're doing the evolution, the growth and mastery, whatever we want to call it, you're going from the self-conscious state is survival of the fittest. That's the old operating system. That's one that's being fueled and guided by fear. And the metaphorical fuel that we're talking about here, once we go from the survival of the fittest and we start to clean up the fear, we're cleaning up the particulates of our own fuel, of our imagination technology. And so when that fuel gets purified, that's makes passion pure. And when the passion is pure, you're no longer being guided or victimized by survival-based thoughts. They have no power over you. Victim consciousness, there's all sorts of different personal development names for that. But once that purification happens, again, when you are more like, what is the truth versus what are the lies that I'm believing about this fear, you make that tilt, and all of a sudden now your passion can flow much more efficiently,
Mm.
effectively, peak performance, high performance, flow state, where your creativity and your logic and your emotion can come together and converge, and it's just a more natural way of being, instead of feeling like the doing, got to get somewhere. You're just more present and naturally ease and opportunity and a more effective way of navigating your life becomes effortlessly more clear, just
Mhm.
in the physics of it all. If you have less resistance, you're able to flow faster.
Exactly. I love that because it reminds me of how passion, so when you're allowing your passion to be, and it's not coming out of that place, just to come full circle, it's not coming out of that place of need, it's coming out of a place of pure just desire that I want to share this. It's also not coming from a place of ego in the sense that you don't need to do it. You're just doing it because you want to, because it makes you happy, because you're joyful about it. You're also passionate about it. You are doing it out of a pure desire, and you're not therefore enslaved by it. And you're not, uh, because
Mm.
you're not enslaved by it, you can be dynamic and flow around it as well.
Mm.
You're not actually attached to any of it. And
Mhm.
because of that, it can be more easily, it can form because it's not tied to anything. It's not being tied down and chained by you. So this is also something that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of when people create something. I think they see it so much as an extension of themselves, and how that can really inhibit the process of creation when you tie obviously your worth to it, but also if you tie your identity to it and your ego to it, such that
Yeah.
you need it to become something, you need it to be successful, or you need it to produce something um,
Yeah.
outside of itself. And I just created a little video on this, but just to tie this together is that you actually, I feel like the most successful things that I've seen out there are when people simply create something because they see not just a need for it in society, but they just notice something that they feel like should be there, something that is like missing, or something that would be helpful, or whatever. And along the lines of that, they just go out there and they just create it. They just create it. And it's not for any other reason than the fact that they can see that this thing would be clearly helpful to one or many different people. And it literally has nothing to do with them. Like, it has nothing to do with their ego. It's simply because the thing just needs to exist. And they go out there and they just create it, and they make it sustainable in such a way that it has its own motion, its own momentum, and it's sustainable, and it lives on beyond them. And it never had anything to do with them. Like, they don't have any need to talk about it in terms of them, in terms of like, oh, I created this, or like, this is my empire. It's like, it has nothing to do with that, essentially. And like, I feel like those are the conditions for the thing to thrive at its best. It's like, it has nothing to do with you. It is just its own consciousness. It's its own thing. And there it is out there in the world, like, doing its thing, and helping people everywhere. And you just continue doing that. And you just live your life doing more of that.
Mm. Oh,
You know what I mean?
yes. And thank you for saying that, because it's like I'm on I was definitely immersed in that other, and I'm on the tail end of like allowing that full richness. Uh, the where I wouldn't necessarily say that I was in the need or even the ego. It was just when you when you're an artist and you do pour your heart and your soul and your passion and your time into something, it like
Mm.
that entanglement can be kind of tough
Oh
uh
yeah.
to let go of. And it's like you said, there is an element of like, I need this thing to grow, to survive. Like it's gonna like, and you feel that, but you know, in that other artistic level, there's so much that you're pouring into your work that it can be tough. But like, thank you for saying that, because I need to hear that. It's like I need to reinforce that, like just being creative just for the sake of being creative is definitely the best and the most fulfilling way to go about it, for sure.
Life-giving.
Yeah.
And really one can only begin doing that when your self-love and self-acceptance really are just coming from within. Because until
Yeah.
you do that, everything is being pimped on some level for that,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know?
And worthiness. Yeah. Worthiness of, well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, this was
Yeah.
super, super lovely.
Yes.
Yeah. Where can my listeners, our listeners find you, Jeremy? Anything, any last words?
Yeah. So, jeremylasman.com, JEREMYLASMAN.com. You can get a free gift on there for putting your email. It's a masterclass that introduces my work. Um, and on Facebook, I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Jeremy A. Lasman, I believe. Um, Love to meet new people and talk big ideas. Uh, and yeah, I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you for being on here. I can't wait to see more of what you do and continue to share. And I'll place your links in the description for people to check you out further.
Beautiful.
Definitely.
This just
Thank you.
flew by. Did we do an hour? Was that an hour?
We did, I think, like 40 minutes, something like
40
that.
minutes. Okay. Yeah. It's like that
Yeah.
flew by.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
More to come. I'll be in touch.
Yes.
Yes?
Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeremy.
Bye.
Bye.